Good morning. Welcome back to the second half of our presentation about designing for an aging population in New York City. My name is Susan Wright, and I'm a member of the Design for Aging Committee of the New York chapter of the American Institute of Architects. I'm going to share with you two significant efforts of our members to improve conditions for seniors in New York City. Many of you are aware of the Aging in Place Guide for Building Owners. This is available in English, Spanish, and Mandarin, and hopefully you've received a PDF link to download it yourself. The creation of that guide was influenced by a design workshop held in 2013 and follow-up efforts by our committee. The Booming Boroughs design workshop brought influential decision makers into our group and helped us to build advocacy. The goal of Aging in Place is to adapt living environments to complement and support us as we age. One could say to make living ageless. The demographics in New York City are similar to the rest of the world in that population is getting older as medical advances allow more adults to live longer. According to a recent report by the New York City Comptroller, between 2005 and 2015, New York City's population over the age of 65 grew by almost 20%. That's more than double the rate of the total population growth and more than triple the rate of the population under 65. In New York City today, there are more than 1.1 million adults over 65. That's about 13% of the city's total population. In the last presentation, we talked about the rarity of new affordable housing for seniors. And this discussion of Aging in Place highlights one way that we can preserve as much existing housing as is truly critical for New York City. Aging in place, in the best sense, means that I can stay in my home until the very end of my life. Physical improvements can be made, services can be brought into my home to assist me, and technology can allow me to communicate with doctors and families without requiring me to leave the house. Moving is a very stressful lifetime event, and doing so at the end of one's life is particularly problematic. I want to remain in my home and in my neighborhood. That also allows me to continue to contribute to my neighborhood and my community. For elder New Yorkers to remain independent, their housing must accommodate their changes in ability. The Design for Aging Committee is one of 25 membership groups within the New York chapter. The architecture and design community has been at the forefront of this movement to help create ageless housing that's both beautiful and inclusive. In 2011, our committee released two documents. One was to try to educate our fellow architects on how to create age-friendly design, and the other was to help improve overall New York City and both urban design and architectural guidelines. We do this work in order to educate ourselves and the community about how to best design to adapt living environments to complement and support us as we age. There's a link here for our website, and you can download this and other documents there. The Booming Boroughs Design Workshop was held on a Saturday in 2013 to tackle this discussion of aging in place. We knew that statistics showed that most seniors would prefer to stay in their apartments and age in place. We wanted to help rethink how to make this possible. We hope to identify some of the obstacles, and we specifically wanted to identify ideas for modification of New York City's existing housing stock and neighborhoods in order to make them more easily negotiable for seniors. We intentionally brought together a range of people who worked with or impacted the lives of seniors. We wanted to encourage everyone to participate in rethinking the way we perceive aging. The group broke out into 5 separate groups and then reported back to each other at the end of the day. By focusing on different scales, such as individual apartments, smaller buildings, high-rise buildings, and adaptive reuse, plus also allowing for a big ideas group, we identified physical modifications, social services, and technologies to improve housing outcomes. After the workshop, we held an exhibition at the Center for Architecture, and we also gave public talks to both professional and lay groups about aging in place. There's a Vimeo link at the bottom of the slide to the introduction to the workshop that you may wish to watch at a later date. In 2015, the New York City government created a local law to require the creation of a guide for use by owners of existing New York multifamily buildings. We know that new construction is required to be handicap accessible, but a large portion of New York City housing is in existing older buildings. During 2015 and 2016, the Design for Aging Committee worked with the New York City Department for the Aging in an advisory group to create the recommendations in the guide. You'll see as we go through them that the improvements are intentionally modest. The goal is to reduce falls and allow for independent living. We took care to avoid jargon, and we tried to illustrate concepts with photos. Many of the ideas in the guide were intended to be taken on by a handyman or by the apartment dweller herself. The guide outlines physical changes that will help regardless of the age, the income, or the ability level of the apartment resident. And income is an important consideration for seniors in New York City, and another reason to suggest modest, simple changes that the landlord of a small building would be willing to do. Other advocacy and education groups were preparing aging in place guides at the same time that we were, and I suggest you look at the AARP and Enterprise Foundation guides in particular, also available on the internet. Over the next 10 slides, I'll outline the concepts presented in our guide. The building entry and front yard. Simple changes can improve the ability of seniors to get out into the neighborhood and join in. At a neighborhood level, this includes providing benches for seating outside local businesses, adding clear signage to help neighbors with low vision, and generally improving the quality of lighting so that walking after dark doesn't become treacherous. A well-lit path to the building entrance from the sidewalk or the parking area helps avoid falls. In the image on the right of Brinquin Court, they added a canopy and seating and a driveway to improve the safety for residents. Simply having a place to wait for transportation off the street was very important. Ramps and stairs. The building entry should be simple and safe to use for all ages. If stairs are existing and can't be redesigned to include a ramp, then certainly secure handrails must be added. Any changes in elevations make it particularly hard for residents using a walker or a cane. Walk surface materials should be even and well lit. All public doors should be modified to operate with automatic openers whenever possible. The amount of force needed to open an entry door should be modified to allow a resident with arthritis or mobility issues, or even a parent with a stroller, to open doors easily. The building lobby and common spaces. Place some seating near the building entry, especially if there's a view to the outside. Allow space for someone in a wheelchair to pull up and join the seated group. As soon as you enter a lobby, it should be easy to find where you're going. If the view to the elevators and the apartment directory are not visible, then be sure to provide signage that shows where they are. A bulletin board with activities and information on local events promotes socialization. Wayfinding. Wayfinding is a concept that more often works when the architecture supports it, but it can help residents with visual or memory impairments find their way around a building. Use of color can provide visual clues, and clear, consistent signs can help everyone. Plants can help soften a space, and they contribute to well-being. In this image on the left, it's clear it's the building entry because it has a canopy where you can stand out of the rain, and there's a large, very visible house sign. I particularly like this image on the right from the Association of Registered Graphic Designers that shows that signage at a consistent height and a format will help those with low vision, and frankly will help anyone in a building. Lighting. Using the right type of lighting can help prevent falls and increase the accessibility of the building. Consistent lighting levels result in a safer home by eliminating hazardous dark spots. The right type of lighting is also important. Using indirect lighting fixtures where the light is aimed at the ceiling or the wall and the light bulb is not visible directly to the eye is very important. You can avoid glare, which is caused by uneven lighting or by a contrast between a light surface and an adjacent surface that's darker. You can provide blinds on windows and dimming switches on lights where possible. Doors and entries. Apartment doors should not be too heavy to open easily, and an existing door can be fitted with assist devices if needed. Door handles should always be lever type. In the image on the right, the resident is allowed to personalize the hallway a bit and could use the shelf to set down a purse or packages when entering the apartment. In the image on the left from Hannock, a contrasting flooring color and door paint was added at the apartment entry to help with wayfinding. If carpeting is used, it should have a low profile, and carpet tile is very versatile in multifamily housing as it allows for replacement of damaged tiles. Flooring. Installing a non-slip, evenly textured flooring throughout the building can help prevent falls. Pay particular attention to surfaces that may get wet, like building entries, laundry rooms, apartment kitchens, and baths. Any flooring material change or level change needs to be signaled to the eye, and you can do that by a change in color or by using contrast. Door thresholds should really never be higher than 1.2 centimeters, but even that can be a trip hazard. If you must have a raised threshold, use a contrasting color to highlight the threshold and consider adding a transition strip. In bathrooms and kitchens, a small format tile is a much better choice because more joints provide greater resistance to slipping. Handrails and grab bars. Handrails and lean rails should be provided from the building entry through all the common spaces, all the way up to the apartment door. Inside apartments, all bathrooms should have grab bars at the toilet and the bathtub or the shower. If there's currently a towel bar in the location that a grab bar is actually needed, please be sure to swap it out and install the grab bar. The towel bar can fail, and that's worse than not having it there. There are actually very attractive grab bars available which perform two functions, like this toilet paper holder that is also a grab bar. Seating. A mix of seating types allows a room to function in many ways, and movable seating, of course. Seating should be provided outside the building entry, in the building lobby, and at all elevators. For seniors, chairs that have arms and backs are important for comfort, and the arms are needed to help lift yourself up from a seated position. The image on the right is the senior center at Brinquin Court, and they use the same chair but in several colors to brighten up the space. The last concept from the guide is technology and communications, which can certainly help with aging in place and can accommodate residents with hearing, visual, or mobility impairments. This diagram illustrates how wireless sensors were added to an existing apartment to help with aging in place. In this case, it was a series of smart sensors that passively monitor activity and look for changes in activity and behaviors as a trigger to health outcomes. The system has allowed frail seniors to remain living independently while also providing families with daily information. In an apartment with a hearing or vision impaired resident, wireless doorbells can be plugged into an electrical outlet to provide visual and audio notification, and the same thing can be done with smoke and fire alarms. In the next few slides, I will wrap up by highlighting a few more strategies that I've used to assist with aging in place. In the previous presentation, I introduced you to one of the new buildings on the Self-Help campus in Flushing, Queens. Before building the new building, two of the existing buildings were renovated with tenants living in the units. These two buildings were built in 1968 and 1970. The average age of residents was 80, and the average time they had been in their apartments was 30 years. Strategy number 1 is installing a telehealth kiosk in the lobby. This allows residents to monitor their own blood pressure and their weight every day. It has improved general health and improved health literacy. Strategy number 2. Social spaces are programmed to encourage interaction between residents. In this image, we see a chair yoga class, but crafts, games, yoga, cooking are all great activities that can be shared by residents as well as volunteers and family of all ages who can join in. Strategy number 3, garden spaces. Garden spaces are an important part of any housing, but wheelchair and walker-friendly hardscapes are particularly important for seniors. Fixed seating should be spaced to allow a wheelchair user to join a group. Seating that's in a mix of sunny and shaded areas with a level paved surface is the most inclusive. The last innovation to talk about is called the Virtual Senior Center, which helps homebound seniors stay involved in community events and fight the isolation that can come with living alone. A computer and webcam and simple interactive elements are used to gather people together at a senior center for singing or reading the paper or talking about political or cultural events. It's a fantastic example of technology helping with communication. Since mid-March, all senior centers in New York City have been closed, and they're likely to remain closed for quite a while. Technology such as Zoom and programs like the Virtual Senior Center have allowed New York City seniors to stay in touch and to help fight the terrible isolation the confinement of COVID has caused. I hope that you'll find the Aging in Place guide to be helpful for your work. Our Design for Aging Committee is available to help if you're interested in developing your own advocacy programs, such as the Booming Boroughs Workshop or your own Aging in Place guide, and we'd love to share our experiences and hear more about yours. We thank you again for the opportunity.